On a sunny but cool Saturday when I was somewhere between 8 and maybe 6 years of age, I had one of the greatest days of my life. My family and I were at a playground off of Vancouver, British Columbia's False Creek. I'm not really sure why we were there. We may have been visiting some friends of my folks who lived in one of the houses nearby, or it's possible it was just the sun was out. Vancouver, even more than Portland, can have this 800-foot ceiling move in and just stay for months. The sun can turn into a rumor, and when the sun comes out, you almost are obligated to run outside and take advantage of it. So maybe that's why we were there. Who knows? In many ways, it doesn't matter how I got to the playground, because in my memory, the playground was everything. I was an only child, so I was there by myself. I didn't know any of the other children on the playground. I don't think I ever learned their names. And nameless or not, we fell together deep into that play that children can fall into with one another. The slide and the stairs leading up to it turned into a great sailing ship moving on some distant and dangerous set of waters, and we were perhaps the pirates or the heroes doing battle against them. The stakes were enormous, and we were the folks shaping the fate of the world. When our parents began to call us and say, it's time to go, it's time for dinner, we couldn't believe that the afternoon had gone by. We had spent the time in a state of flow, in this place of perfect creativity and play and mutual building, where time kind of falls away. Insofar, I've heard people since that day say that that heaven is a place that exists outside of time. And insofar as I can understand that claim, and I can't really understand that claim, I am so thoroughly limited by time. I understand it by remembering that occasion all those years ago and a handful of occasions similar to it. That day on the playground, there was no past filled with nostalgia or regret or anything in between, and there was no future filled with anticipation or anxiety. There was just a glorious now, a now that just, in a perfect world, I suppose we would have stayed in forever. I guess we would have become hungry eventually, but we had this longing to stay in that moment in perpetuity. Today, in the Gospel of Matthew, we hear Jesus say that if you want to understand the kingdom, that it's not going to be revealed to the smart people. The wise and the educated are going to totally miss it. It's going to be the children to whom are the ones who see the kingdom. He likens his listeners, he likens us to children. And because Jesus' first language is paradox or holy contradiction or beautiful generative ambiguity, before he gets to this positive interpretation of what it is to be like a child, he offers us a negative one. He says, you people, you're like the children in the marketplace, complaining that other children aren't behaving in the way that you want them to. We played a song and you didn't dance for us. We wailed and you didn't mourn. We put that we wanted an Xbox on our Christmas list and you got us socks. So there is this resentful, whining complaint that I suspect all of us have heard and all of us have engaged in at one time or another. This is the sort of childishness that that I think we're thinking of when we say to someone, "Oh, grow up." So Jesus starts with this negative or limited example of what it is to be a child. And we could offer a few guesses as to why he leads with this. One possibility, the possibility I'm wondering about today, is Jesus leads with a negative example before moving on to a positive one, because he wants us to remember that children are fully human. And to talk about anybody as though they were relentlessly perfect is to forget their humanity. When we talk about people with Down syndrome and say, "Oh, they're like angels," that's actually a dehumanizing statement to make, because angels are not human beings. Folks with Down syndrome have the full complexity that the rest of us have. When we talk about Native Indian folks and say, "Oh, they're deeply in tune with nature," this is actually a dehumanizing statement. It's a kind of soft bigotry. It denies the possibility that a First Nations person could have complexity and contradiction and be an individual with different opinions and different ways of encountering reality. And when we say of children, "Oh, they're so innocent," that is also a soft bigotry. It is a way of forgetting the complexity of the child, because I suspect many of us know and remember that children are capable of startling cruelty. That is a thing I certainly knew very well when I was 6 and 8 on this playground. I had witnessed and endured and participated in that cruelty. So Jesus offers this negative, this fully human example of the child, and then he immediately turns the wheel hard and offers this beautiful and positive example of the child. The kingdom is hidden from the smart people, from the educated people, from those with master's degrees, and revealed to the child. Elsewhere, Jesus will say, "Unless you become like a child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven." And then famously, Jesus says, "Let the children come to me," or in the famous words of the King James translation, "Suffer the little children to come to me." All that means is allow them to do that in Old English. "Allow the children to come to me, for it is to one such as these to whom the kingdom is revealed." What does Jesus mean by this? You may have your own guess or your own answer, but I have a wondering that I want to play with this morning, which is that when Jesus invites us to become like children, he's inviting us to remember experiences such as the one that I had on the playground all those years ago. Experiences of possibility, of connection, of mutuality, of vulnerability, of creativity. There's a assertion that you hear fairly often these days, and particularly if you're online, you will hear it fairly often. And the assertion or claim goes something like this: things are worse than ever. Things are worse than they have ever been. We are in this decline, in this ski slope down into doom. There's I don't know, do you want to call it a meme, or I suppose it's or a short cartoon, and it poses the question, why are so many people today depressed and anxious? And then it offers an answer, and the answer comes in the form of a stage direction: gestures at everything. In other words, it's not only are things worse than they've ever been, but they're self-evidently worse than they have ever been. To look at the world around you is to discover that we're going to hell in a handbasket, that we are in this place of relentless decline. I'm going to show my hand and say I think this claim is absurd. in nature. One of the things that comes with getting older is like you can remember other times. And it is always a trip for me to meet folks younger than me who have this nostalgia for a time before they were born and wish they'd been around in the 1980s when I was an adolescent. Gosh, I wish I'd been around then. I could have seen In Excess live. And like, yes, you could have. But also what I remember from that era was huge anxiety about nuclear annihilation. I remember the HIV/AIDS epidemic, like taking away all of these young people who were dying, these horrible deaths. I remember watching nightly in the news the expansion of the hole in the ozone layer. There were a lot of things that were tough about being around in the 1980s. Prior to that, 1968 sounds hellish. We were routinely murdering elected officials. The Vietnam War was raging. There was the sense that the social contract was fraying. Before that, think about the privation and the suffering of the Depression, the horror of sweatshops even before that, and then the generation upon generation in which infant and child mortality was a regular part of people's lives. I am so grateful that it is most likely my children will outlive me. I do not wish to trade places with a time when the death of a child was a common thing. I know some of you know about the death of a child. It is a grief like nothing else. We could just keep on plugging in examples of other eras. But for a moment, let's assume that the claim is correct. Right now is objectively worse than any other time in history. If you had your choice between living today or living in the middle of the bubonic plague, a rational person would choose the bubonic plague. Let's run with this claim for a moment. That probably is worth laughing at. Thank you for. But anyway, if that's right, then what does it mean to respond like a child? What does it mean to respond to the moment we're in right now in a childlike fashion? I want to suggest that the childlike response is, at its best, the deep presence, the flow experience that I had on that playground. It is to say, the past, with its either nostalgia or remorse, is gone. That is not a place in which we can live. And the future, with its anxiety or anticipation or somewhere in between, is not available to us. It's not to say that it's not good to make plans. It is good to make plans. It's not to say it's not good to hope. It is. And nor is it to say it's not good to learn from the past. That is a good thing. But it is to say the place in which we are able to act is right now. This is unique. This moment that we are in today, this Sunday morning in July, is different from every Sunday in the past and every Sunday that will be, because right now God has given us the capacity to make choices, to do things, to step into community and to take action. And on this day, we're invited to pose that most childlike of questions, which is, why? This imaginative and holy question. Why is it that in a society that is so full of abundance, there are people who are hungry? And why should we not do something about it? And our small answer, our real answer, our tangible answer here at Grace is the Sack Lunch Ministry and the Sunday meal. Why? In a society, again, with abundance, are there families who don't know where they will sleep? And our small answer and real answer and tangible answer here at Grace is our partnership with Family Promise, where as many as 6 families at a given time will find stable and dignified housing as they journey into permanent housing. Why Should all of us not have an opportunity to create beauty, to remember that we are artists, to find the community that flows out of doing glorious things together? And why should we not do something about that? And the answer to that why is Grace Art Camp. It is Sunday morning and getting together and doing something out of fashion and a little dangerous, which is singing together and telling stories together and sharing in coffee and connection and more. We could keep on asking these whys. This is the invitation into childishness in the best sense of that word. The invitation into playfulness, into questioning, into creativity, into connection with others, even if we don't know their names. At our best, saying yes to this invitation will invite us into that state of flow, into that place where we recognize the power of right now and act accordingly. At our best, when we say yes to this invitation, we join Jesus in the dance that we just sang about. We join Jesus in the holy and playful and wonderful work of building up the kingdom.